Good morning, everybody, and welcome to my live stream. It is Friday, May the 10th. Excuse me, the 2nd. What the heck? It's not the 10th. It is the 2nd of May, and there is a lot going on this week. I said last week it was going to be a big week in data this week, and it did not disappoint. So let's dive right in and start talking about what the heck is going on and what this is going to mean to the market. We are dead in the middle of spring. This is when the housing market is supposed to be the strongest. We're not seeing it. We're not seeing it. Like, we're seeing the housing market not lose speed. Like, we're not seeing housing prices drop, but we're just not seeing a lot of growth in number of homes being sold right now. And I think buyers are still strong, but they're kind of concerned with the volatility. You've got sellers that are holding back. Sellers are still saying, look, I'm just not ready. Especially with the volatility, especially with the crazy things that have been happening with the stock market. The consumer sentiment is definitely concerning right now. The fear of where we're going. Are we headed into a recession or not? What is that going to mean? Those are all major concerns that are on people's minds, and they're weighing pretty heavily. So let's talk about what we learned this week. First of all, we learned about GDP. So we had on Wednesday, the federal government reported GDP, gross domestic product. How much did the United States produce in goods and services in the first quarter of 2025? And did that go up or down? Well, guess what? It shrunk. So it shrunk, and everybody expected small growth, but we didn't get small growth. We had a reduction in the productivity, how much goods and services the United States produced. Now, what you have to understand here is it's what we produced, and it has relative to what we're consuming. And the reason why I say that is because it has to do with trade. Part of the calculation is how much, if we produced a lot of stuff that we then traded or sold overseas, that's actually good for GDP. Now, that the concern is what President Trump is concerned about is he's concerned about the amount of goods that we are selling compared to the amount of goods that are being sold here. And they're saying, hey, there's a trade imbalance, that we are importing a whole bunch of stuff because everybody has free reign to import into the United States, but we're going to slow that down because we're going to add tariffs that are going to slow down the amount of imports so that we produce more within our borders. But ultimately, what happened in the first quarter is we actually encouraged more people to import because they were afraid tariffs were coming in. And so that caused the GDP to drop because we didn't produce a lot more goods. We brought them in from outside. They were produced somewhere else. Now, that might be just a temporary effect. As a matter of fact, the goal of the tariffs is to decrease the amount of imports. And what happened in the first quarter, we increased them. But here's the fear. The fear is recession is defined historically as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP, in loss of productivity. Well, we just had 1 quarter. We just had half of what it takes to prove that we are in a recession, which means 3 months from now, at the end of July, we're going to get the numbers for April, May, and June. And if it says that we have had another reduction in GDP, then based on the old rule, we're in a recession, which means we could technically be in a recession today. By definition, we could be in a recession today. Now, I keep saying the old rule because the new rule has to do with if the federal government decides that the economic conditions are such that it warrants being labeled as a recession. Why they changed that in part was because of COVID. Because COVID, we had a major shock to the system that happened that created a shock over a 2-month, 3-month timeline. They are labeling that. They have labeled that as a recession. Okay, and it's rightfully so a recession. So they had to change the rules to call it a recession because clearly it didn't last enough to have 2 consecutive quarters. So that old rule, that was the rule, now became the old rule. Okay, I don't know how they're going to label this next recession, but there is a big argument that says we are currently in a recession. Now, the question is, what is that going to mean? Well, first of all, recessions mean good things for interest rates. And I'm going to talk about interest rates right now. I'm going to remind you, I've talked about this a lot. Let's go over here and look at, this is the average 30-year rate. These gray bars are recessions. And so what you're seeing is in recessions, rates end lower than where they started. I believe I showed you this last week, so I'm not gonna camp on that too long. But the fact is that recessions are good for interest rates overall. That's a positive sign. But maybe we're not going into a recession, because recessions, the other data that the government looks at is it looks at jobs, and it looks at how strong are jobs? Because in a recession, because we are producing less goods and services, we need less people to produce those goods and services. But guess what? Today was a jobs report, and there was job growth today. The unemployment rate stayed flat, and there were more jobs added than what we had expected. And there's more people wanting to work. And so that's all good signs for the economy. So we are dealing with very, very different signals, which is bad news for where stability comes into play. Like, the more instability we have, the harder it is for somebody to make a decision, which is why I think we're dealing with a lot of people sitting on the sidelines, unknown what to do, not knowing what to do, because they're afraid. They're afraid, what is this going to mean to me in the future? What is this going to mean to my interest rate? If I sell my house now, what kind of a rate am I going to get in 2 months when I'm buying a new house? And in most cases, as a seller, you can't back out of a deal halfway through. So you're stuck once you've got your house in contract, and rates skyrocket in the meantime. That's a heart attack waiting to happen that most people aren't willing to endure. So the good news is that rates have calmed down. So we've had huge volatility in interest rates. I'm going to show you here in this chart. Rates have been more volatile in the month of April than we've seen in 5 years. It was really COVID was the last time we saw rates as volatile as they were in April. This is the chart showing April's interest rates, the average 30-year fixed rate. We started out April at 6.73. We are ending April at 6.86. So not as good as where we started, but man, did we have some big changes in between. So we popped all the way down on April 4th to 6.6%, and then immediately shot all the way up to 7.07%. That's almost a 0.5% increase in a matter of 5 days. That is dramatic. And then we immediately shoot right back down. And since April 15th, we've been pretty stable. We shot back up some for a couple of days, almost 6.9%, 7%. We came back down, and we see a nice little curve right here with a little bit of an upswing right now. Okay, a lot of volatility. This upswing today has to do with the jobs market and the fact that jobs were strong. And so with strong jobs, there's a concern the Fed is not going to lower interest rates. So here's the deal. The Fed is meeting next week. And with the Fed meeting next week, they're meeting on Tuesday and Wednesday. And Wednesday they have they make their announcements, they release their press release, and the Fed is going to talk about what they see. And the Fed has two jobs. I've talked about this many times. The two jobs are to keep employment high. Well, we're seeing employment doing pretty good, and to keep inflation low. And we're seeing inflation doing pretty good too. But both of them have concerns. If unemployment starts to become a problem, the Fed should lower rates. But right now it's not. So that means the Fed doesn't have to lower rates. If inflation gets under control even more, the Fed can lower rates. But it's not getting under control. It's just staying stable. So we're not seeing inflation get worse at this point, but we're not seeing it get better. And so there's a lot of wait and see in the eyes of the Fed. And the question is, what are they going to do with that wait and see? We'll hear more next week. Okay. But today's jobs report was bad news, but not as bad as it could have been. If we had a really, really strong jobs report, we'd see interest rates skyrocketing right now. We aren't seeing that, but we're seeing them tipping up a little bit. This is going to be the new norm for now until we figure out what direction this economy is going. Throughout any change in history, huge volatility while you're in the middle of change. Okay, because the seas don't know which direction you're going. And so you're clashing into waves that are coming from both sides of the boat. And you don't know which way to turn because you got waves coming this way and waves coming that way. And that's what we're dealing with right now in the economy. And we're dealing with a lot of instability and a lot of uncertainty. But I'm going to remind you of what I continue to say, which is a famous quote from Warren Buffett, which is, I am courageous when others are scared, and I'm scared when others are courageous. Well, right now, everybody is scared. Everybody doesn't know what to do. So be courageous. It doesn't need to be a crazy amount of courage, but take that step. Do that thing that you were thinking of doing to grow during this time of instability. Because if it's the right thing to do, Don't wait for the right time to do it, and necessarily, because often the right time, you don't know until it's too late. You don't know when you hit the bottom and the market starts coming back up until it's already come back up. And by that point, it's too late. And so you have an opportunity to be courageous and take action. For a lot of people, that's as simple as just go buy that home. Go buy that investment property, grow your portfolio, grow your business, double down, and be aggressive when everybody else is scared. That's the key that I'm trying to get across. And that's really about the big picture when I'm looking at the economy, when I'm looking at kind of the mixed signals. Housing market, it's not giving mixed signals. It's clear the market is just chugging along. Okay, we're seeing, again, everybody's been predicting, oh, we're going to see house prices drop. We haven't seen it. I don't expect us to see it at all. Even through the challenges we're dealing with right now, we're not seeing housing prices drop because there's still enough demand to meet the supply that's there, because the supply is just not there. Sellers aren't selling. They're concerned. I talked about that a couple of minutes ago. So we're seeing housing prices stay stable. Again, in some markets, super hot, some markets, super cool. Talking nationally, that we're seeing housing prices stay stable. Okay, so it's important when you're thinking about what move I should make, that you've got to make a move based upon the dynamics that are happening right now. If you're in the market to think about buying a home, timing, the best time to buy a home would have been back in March of 2020, because that's when things were super volatile. People were worried and prices were dipping a little bit. Interest rates were dropping, but the fear stopped everybody from doing it. Well, we're in a similar fearful position. I don't believe it's anywhere near as bleak or concerning, but it is still a similar position where people don't know what to do. And I believe looking backwards in the future to today, people are going to say, man, I should have bought a house during spring of 2025 when things were that volatile. All right. For those of you who are homeowners, you're going to be kicking yourself if you keep paying those high credit card bills. I am talking to more and more people who have just been trying to figure out how to pay down their credit cards, and they're not getting anywhere. So you need to look at home equity loans and home equity lines of credit, and I have multiple of them as great options for you. I've talked to a couple of clients just this week that have been led the wrong way from local banks. And I'm not saying anything wrong with local banks. I'm saying that loan officer at that bank is an order taker. Their job when you walk in is to say, yes, sir, I'll give you what you want. They don't understand the markets. They don't understand the options. And of those two people I'm thinking of right now, one of them, I told them, go back to your bank and tell them this and get them to do that for you. That's the best loan for you. I'm not trying to convince you that you have to work with me. I'm trying to tell you that I have the most knowledge of how the markets work. I have the most knowledge of all the different loan programs that are out there. And in many cases, I have the best loan options. But in the cases that I don't, I'm going to tell you the truth, and I'm going to connect you with somebody else who's going to take better care of you. All right. Last thing real quick, continue to plug my podcast From Profits to Properties. Just a couple minutes ago, I recorded next Tuesday's episode. You'll love it if you are a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, or if you're just looking to grow your wealth through real estate. This podcast is for you. Check it out from profitstoproperties.com every single Tuesday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. Yes, I know you're going to wake up at 6 a.m. Pacific time just to listen to my podcast. But please check it out. If you like it, I would love it for you to share it with a friend. At this point, guys, I am done with what I want to cover for today. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to post them on live right now. If you're watching live, if you're watching recorded, then post the comments and I'll get back to them. I really appreciate you listening. I really appreciate your trust. And I want to help to guide you through the mortgage process. So if you're looking to purchase, if you're looking to refinance, scan this QR code up here. I am interviewing to be your loan officer, and I look forward to that opportunity to help you or anyone that you trust to refer to me to take great care of them. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you next Friday. Bye-bye.